Coming up today, facing claims of nepotism and unethical behaviour, Korea's political parties vow to draw up regulations preventing lawmakers hiring relatives as managers or interns. Good news for the local economy as industrial output jumps by 1.7% in May from April, the biggest monthly jump in well over a year. Plus, EU leaders deliver another tough message to Britain. They say the UK will be denied access to the lucrative single market if it limits the free movement of EU workers. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 30th of June. You're tuned into our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We start at the National Assembly this afternoon, where the ethics of several lawmakers have been making headlines in recent days. Last week, Minju Party lawmaker So Young-gyo was discovered to have hired her daughter to work as an intern in her office at the Parliament. Since then, 5 ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers, including Park In-suk and Lee Wan-yong, were found to have given jobs to family members. The ruling party has since banned its lawmakers from hiring relatives as aides, while the Minju Party is deciding how it will discipline So for the recent scandal. Over at the minor opposition People's Party, the 2 co-leaders have resigned over allegations that 2 of the party's lawmakers forged contracts with their PR agencies and received tens of thousands of dollars in kickbacks. The party has vowed to punish the lawmakers and keep the National Assembly from being stained with corruption. A top U.S. official has warned that without U.S. protection of its Asian allies, even advanced countries like South Korea and Japan would seek their own nuclear weapons. Speaking in Washington on Wednesday local time, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken said such a scenario would trigger, quote, regional nuclear arms races, which the U.S. government has been pouring efforts into preventing for decades. He also criticised those who insist the alliances are a financial burden to the U.S., a comment seemingly directed at Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump. Blinken said the world is safer for the American people by having South Korea and Japan under the U.S. nuclear umbrella. The 2016 Rimpac naval exercise has begun off the coast of Hawaii. Over 27 countries are taking part in the exercise, making it the largest to date. South Korea has deployed 700 Navy personnel, along with warships, including an Aegis destroyer and a submarine as well. The exercise, which runs through August 4th, will focus on anti-ship, air and submarines and will include live firing drills. Now, in some much-needed positive news for the local economy, Korea's industrial output is showing a turnaround from the previous month. For the numbers and more, here's our Kim Hae-sung.
Korea's industrial output rebounded in May, posting the biggest rise in 15 months. Statistics Korea's industrial output report for May says output across all industries went up 1.7% last month from the month before. The May figure represents a turnaround from a 0.8% drop recorded in April. The finance ministry, however, cautioned against too much optimism, saying the rebound came on the back of a low base effect seen in April. The slower pace of decline in exports, which logged a 6% drop in May from the year before, narrowed from the 11.2% seen in April. Korea's exports have decreased for 17 straight months since January last year, the longest negative streak in Korea's history. As for the uptick in May's industrial output, the mining and manufacturing sectors led the growth, increasing 2.5% last month from a month earlier. In particular, output in the semiconductor and automobile industries increased 9.9% and 3.7%. Production in the service sector also edged up slightly by 0.1% from the month before. Capital investment remained roughly the same as April, with an increase in transport equipment but a decrease in machinery. The Bank of Korea says its manufacturers' business sentiment index for this month came in at 71, unchanged from the previous month. A reading below 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now, a new report says the free trade agreement between South Korea and the United States has played a prominent role in increasing American exports. According to the U.S. International Trade Commission's report, the FTA has boosted total U.S. exports by between $4.8 billion and $5.3 billion US dollars. That is the second largest increase among the 13 FTAs the U.S. has. Top is the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which raised U.S. exports by up to $126 billion. The report contradicts claims made by Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, who says NAFTA and other trade deals merely expand America's trade deficit and cost thousands of American jobs. EU leaders have made it clear that both access to the single market and control over migration cannot be granted, meaning Britain may have to make some concessions down the line. They also reiterated their call for Britain to begin the actual withdrawal process. Oh Jung-hee reports.
EU leaders sent yet another strong message to the UK that access to the single market will be granted only if the UK allows free movement of people. The message came after the second meeting of EU leaders in Brussels on Wednesday, this time without Britain.
If the United Kingdom wanted, in the framework of the negotiation at the end of it, to have access to the internal market, then the United Kingdom would have to accept all its rules with all its obligations.
He's referring to the EU's guarantee of four freedoms: free movement of people, capital, goods and services for any country that wants access to its common market. This principle was added to the summit statement at the last minute after British Prime Minister David Cameron said immigration was one of the main reasons why voters chose Brexit.
Leaders made it crystal clear today: access to the single market requires acceptance of all four freedoms, including the freedom of movement. There will be no single market à la carte.
The EU leaders also reiterated calls for the UK to trigger Article 50, the legal mechanism for withdrawal that starts 2 years of negotiations before the UK's exit from the bloc.
We reconfirmed that Britain's withdrawal from the European Union must be orderly, and there will be no negotiations of any kind until the UK formally notifies its intention to withdraw.
The EU seeks for political and economic stability after Cameron has said his successor should be the one to begin the withdrawal process, prolonging the uncertainty about what comes next after Brexit. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
So, as the world continues to digest Britain's surprise decision to leave the European Union, Korea's small and medium exporters are taking stock of their future operations in Europe. You might expect them to be in a rather gloomy mood, but the opposite is actually true, with the majority feeling pretty good. Oh Seong reports.
Small and medium-sized consumer product businesses in Korea are keeping calm and carrying on amid the Brexit fallout. For more than 22 years, this food supplier has been exporting Korean food and snacks to European countries, including the UK and the Netherlands. While the Brexit decision initially raised some eyebrows, this company doesn't plan on cutting its shipments.
Our company largely goes through the European market, so reducing our exports is out of the question. We'll keep a close eye on what happens over the next 2 years.
It's also business as usual for a medical equipment company, although it worries tariffs will change in 2 years from now.
We expect there will be various ramifications in terms of FDA tariffs and exchange rates, but our exports to Europe will continue as normal.
In fact, consumer product companies are keeping positive as a whole, seeking new opportunities abroad despite a protracted slump in exports and uncertainty surrounding Brexit. An expo for consumer good exporters almost tripled in size compared to last year, with more than 1,600 companies taking part and 550 buyers coming from abroad.
I think an original idea that offers convenience has plenty of potential for overseas markets.
Even amid the global recession, exports of major consumer product categories, cosmetics, fashion, food, medicine and household goods, grew around 8% in the first half of this year, compared to the year before. And there's room for more improvement.
If companies actively respond to the crisis with new business methods like electronic transactions, I think our exports may recover.
Experts say business prospects largely depend on how companies fare through the current global uncertainties, improving their product quality and competitiveness, and turning crises into opportunities. Oh Seung, Arirang News.
US President Barack Obama has indirectly blamed the Islamic State militant group for Tuesday's horrific terrorist attack in Istanbul. He said the United States is determined to fight the terrorist group. Incheon has more.
U.S. President Barack Obama and the director of the Central Intelligence Agency have pointed to the Islamic State militant group, also known as ISIS and ISIL, as the most likely culprit behind the terror attack on Istanbul's Ataturk airport on Wednesday. At a press conference in Canada on Wednesday, Obama called the carnage an indication of how little these vicious organizations have to offer. He offered his condolences to the people of Turkey and said the U.S. intends to do what is necessary to prevent such terrible events.
I had a chance to speak to President Erdogan earlier today to discuss with him not only how heartbroken we have been by the images of the injured and those killed, but also to reaffirm our strong commitment to partner with Turkey, with NATO, with the broad-based alliance that we've structured around the world to fight ISIL.
Although ISIS has not claimed responsibility for the attack, CIA Chief John Brennan and U.S. lawmakers say the airport attack mirrors tactics previously employed by the jihadist group. At the Council on Foreign Relations on Wednesday, Brennan said that the latest attacks have the hallmarks of ISIL's depravity. In an interview with Yahoo News the same day, he noted the attackers were suicide vests, which he said complicates the strategy for preventing attacks carried out by a determined enemy. He also expressed his concern about their determination to kill as many people as possible and to carry out attacks abroad, and said he believes the group will keep trying to penetrate American defenses. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said it is monitoring the situation and is prepared to counter any threats in the country. 이지원, Arirang News.
So as we heard there, Turkey and the United States have pretty much blamed the Islamic State group for the attack on Istanbul's main airport. The jihadist group's aim is to instill fear into the general population, and it appears to be working with a growing number of attacks on soft targets. Park Jong-hong has the details.
Attacks by ISIS seem to follow a pattern. The extremist group has been targeting concert halls, airports, and subways that are crowded with civilians and have little to no security. These places are known as so-called soft targets. Such was the case with the Paris attacks last November and the bombings in Brussels in March this year. In fact, the latest bloody attack in Istanbul appear almost identical to the Brussels airport attack, in that 3 terrorists entered the facility, opened fire on people, and blew themselves up in a suicide bombing. The growing number of random terror attacks against the public is creating a lot of anxiety.
I think the whole world is turning into a place that we don't know where we're going to be honest. It's just horrible.
With strikes on soft targets on the rise, experts say ISIS is trying to get more attention and instill fear, especially at a time when it's on the defensive on the local front, losing battles and territory. That's why it is making more use of the internet, posting videos to incite lone wolf attacks around the world. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
2 Vietnamese crewmen accused of killing their Korean captain and boat engineer on the high seas are due to arrive in Korea today to face questioning. Escorted by Korean Coast Guard officials, the 2 suspects, who had been detained in the Seychelles, have transferred through Mumbai and are scheduled to arrive at Incheon International Airport at around 2 p.m. Korea time, around 2 hours from now. A foreign ministry official says the process of getting the men back to Korea has been difficult due to extradition regulations. The 2 Korean victims were allegedly stabbed to death on June 20th while they were sailing near the Seychelles in the Indian Ocean. Renowned futurist Alvin Toffler has died at the age of 87. The self-trained social scientist gained worldwide recognition for his 1970 book Future Shock, which predicted that modern society will suffer from stress and disorientation caused by rapid structural and technological changes. Toffler is also credited with popularizing the term information overload, which he analysed in his following works such as The Third Wave and Power Shift. Later on in his career, the author founded Toffler Associates, a consulting firm that worked with several businesses and national governments, including the US, Mexico and Korea. The US ambassador to South Korea says the 2 countries' alliance is stronger now than ever, based on lasting structures built over the past 63 years. In an exclusive interview with Arirang News, Mark Lippert dismissed concerns that the outcome of the US presidential election in November could negatively affect the decades-old partnership. From the 2 countries' robust defense posture against North Korea and the diplomatic efforts to unify the other 5 parties in the long-stalled 6-party talks, to his affection for Korean culture and the Korean people, you can watch Ambassador Lippert's exclusive interview with our Moon Gonyong on Arirang's News Centre tonight at 10 p.m. Korea time. That's 9 a.m. Eastern. Look forward to that, and those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Have a great day. Goodbye.